Okay, well, it is week 5. Can you believe it? Uh, I am going to go over a few things here briefly and then share maybe a little bit about some hosting services. So, this week we are going to move the office hours to Wednesday from 6 to 7. Not many of you did the survey, but clearly most selected Wednesday 6 to 7 as a better option than Tuesday. As you may have noticed here on our site, I changed the tools we explored here to these drop-down menus. When you create a page for a tool, it's drag and drop, so you can move it to whichever one of these you feel like it fits in. There is no right and wrong or right or wrong answer there. Just put it where you think it works. It looks like people are cruising on the teaching philosophies. I'm going to say that please include technology in your teaching philosophy. It doesn't have to be obviously the main point, but it should be, something around technology use should be in there. The projects are looking great. There's still a few here that are not linked to things or inaccessible. So, just take a look at your classmates and see what they're doing. This is not like a race, so you don't need to be where they are or feel bad for people who aren't wherever you think you are, but it's okay. Just make sure we can see your work. So I had a couple questions around portfolios and resumes and CVs and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is probably your first website and you don't have a ton of things to put on here. So put what you can put on your site, right? You may not have a bunch of publications, but you certainly have done service in various ways, and you have a CV. You can tell us where you went to school, jobs you have, other certificates if you have some of those. So put what you can on the site. You can make it in Google Sites like Co has done here. You can make it in WordPress. And here's kind of that teaching philosophy, the CV, maybe a little bit about yourself. I mean, it doesn't have to be a ton of stuff. This site here is another faculty at Bothell. It's all kind of that same stuff. What she's done, she has some things on the news. This is a student from last year. It's pretty simple, right? Where she went to school, simple stuff. So put what you can on your site. If you're going to make a module or some content creation, which was, remember, let's see, back in week 0, we had kind of these 3 items, right? You can do a teaching portfolio, which is a portfolio. You can make some content for like a unit, or you can just really do a lot of exploring and put all that in one place. And then we have the examples of those things. If you are going to create something, you can find a tool. This is Genially. Somebody explored this the other day, and create some content. This is a fun tool to explore. It's kind of pretty interactive. But you can use whatever tool you want to do this. Google Sites is an amazing thing to build. Here's what we're going to look at. Here's the goals and objectives. Here's some here's a lecture. Here's a reading. Here's an assessment of some kind. You can do all of that stuff within Google. So here is kind of an example of that, again, from last year. It's not super deep, but it works. So, again, do what you can. This is a tool called Articulate. This is something you'd have to get like a trial version to do. But there's lots of tools out there that will help you make a simple kind of start here and work your way through these things and learn something. So one thing that Jonathan has done in this class, and you can tell from his website, he's got his website is jonathanhaldorson.com. So he bought a domain, right? You can do that through a variety of companies. This is Reclaim Hosting. For $35 a year, you get everything you could possibly need. I have a couple sites with them. I also use Bluehost, and Bluehost is, I never got this deal, I don't think, because I'm pretty sure I pay more like the $11.99 a month. But to begin with, for the first year, it's just $3 a month. And you can get, mycoolwebsite.com or whatever. I am more than happy to do this, and we can walk through this in 15 minutes anytime you want. I can help you be that person if you want your own domain. Last year, we asked students to do that, and I think over half of them did that, chose to do that. I don't know that many of them kept their sites, but as I mentioned in that email before, the Kimberly Dollarhide, she's going after it again, and depending on kind of how you see your work and what you feel like you're doing, that might be a useful thing to have. One thing to remember with all of your projects is that if you're using Google Sites or WordPress or Wix or any of those tools, you can have as many websites on that free Google Sites as you want. So try to kind of experiment first and then make your site. Don't only have one site, I would say. Even if you've started one and it's the only one you have and you're working on it, make another one just to play around in and do things just to see what happens. That's learning the tool better. There's a lot of kind of stress that goes with, here's my first site I've ever made ever, and I'm putting all my important stuff on it. I realize that, for many of you, that is the case here. So just take it easy. This is an evolving process, and we're doing good. I'm going to change this week 4 to week 5 here. So this video will be right here. All the same stuff for this week. Just keep working on your project. The reading this week is shorter. The reading this week is shorter, and at the end of week 6, or by week 6, I guess, at the end of week 6, you should have done 3 tools. So let me just see if I'm going to randomly pick one here. Make sure your name is on the tool. Please go back and edit it, and make sure that you demonstrate to us what is the purpose of the tool and some uses. 5 sentences, 2 sentences, something that tells us a little bit about the tool before we get down into some of the other examples. But this is great because I'm glad I chose this one. It shows some examples of how Tricia used this in the class. So my real thing here is just make sure your name's up at the top so I can make sure you all are getting the credit for each of these tools. So welcome to week 5. Let's go. Don't stress. You're all doing great.